Hello and welcome back to another Monday.com tutorial. Today I'll be showing how you can fully automate your invoicing and billing within Monday.com. So what I have here is a events company, and they have a birthday party for Jackson. So Jackson had a birthday party. They bought two things, a kid's birthday cake and a kid's serving ice cream with some just general details about the things that they purchased. And then you can see there's a quantity, there's an amount, and there's a total of those. What we want to do is we want to be able to generate an invoice, a PDF invoice, and then send it across to the customer automatically. So I have this built out within Google Docs for the template. So here's the template that we're going to be using for the invoice. And then Make, which is a third-party integrator that allows you to connect all of these things together and generate the invoice from here. So let's go ahead and press the button and see what happens. So generate invoice, press that button. What's going to happen there is going to give you a status of generating, just lets you know that it's working. Then once the invoice has been generated, it'll add it into this invoice column right there. You'll see just what popped in there, and then it'll give you confirmation that invoice has been created. So if you click on this, it will show you Jackson's birthday party, and then it'll give you all the information. So you have your company, so your company name, then your company address, and all of those details, which can be edited in there. And then you have the bill too. So we have Jackson Bryant, that is the customer. We have their street address, and then we have their email address, along with the invoice number and the event date. Those are being pulled from the fields in this item right there. Let's go back up and open that. We'll be able to see the specific line items. So there's two line items here, kid's birthday cake and kid's serving of ice cream. And we'll be able to see all the totals in there with a grand total of $110. So we have the invoice generated as a PDF, which then we can automatically send across to the customer, which I'll have a separate video for that. For this video, I just want to focus on the generating of the document itself and adding it into a fields column. So that's what it does. It takes all of these various fields from this parent item and these sub items, as well as the customer information. So we see Jackson Bryant, we have the email address, and we have the physical address. So all those fields are being pulled together to generate this invoice right here. So this invoice is being generated off of two different boards and then two different components, which is the items and then the sub items within here. So to do this, we need to set up a webhook within Monday.com. So if we go across over to Make, this first module here, in fact, I'll just start copying these modules across as we go. So create a new module, click Monday.com, scroll all the way down to the bottom for a Watch Events module, click on that, and then we want to add a brand new webhook. So we want to set up the trigger for when this gets fired off. So we'll click Add. Now, I really recommend that you name your webhooks, have a specific naming sequence. I have this for all of the various integrations that I set up, just so I know where it's coming from and what it's related to. So my sequence is I first put the board name, so I know what board the trigger is coming from. In this case, it's an event board, so I'm going to say event board. That's the board name, and I have these / to begin with and to end it, just to tell you that it's a board. Then I have what status it's being, what column it's being triggered off of, and so this icon right there is just the column that's being triggered off of. In this case, it is the generate invoice button that we're doing, but since we can't have a webhook directly off of a button, we're going to have it off of the status. So we're going to have this wait for the status to be generating, and then it'll fire this off. And I'll tell you why you have to set it up that way versus just off the button itself. So we'll say the status column of generating, and I have these brackets here for the actual status that it's at. Now I want to put generating. We want to copy this, then we want to select the account. So I'm going to select this account, ROA. You just add your account here. It's already added, and click Add button right there. Then we click Save. Then before I close this out, I'm just going to rename this module to set the trigger. So we have, event board status of generating. That's the trigger. Click OK. And then I also will add it to the front of the title right here. So when we have a lot more complicated scenarios, I just like naming these just so we know what the trigger is and then what it actually does. So we have trigger and then the action. What is the end result? So we have that in there. We now want to copy the address. This address is a webhook. We want to copy that to the clipboard. Click OK. And then inside of Monday.com, there's an integrate button up top. Click on that. And then go over to the integration center. Scroll down until you see webhooks. Click on webhooks. And then scroll down, and we want to select when a status changes to something, send a webhook. So we'll click add to board, and then we want to use another account. And then in here for the webhook URL, we use the link that we just copied from Make and paste it in right there. Click connect, and then we'll set the status. So when the status changes to generating, send a webhook. And I'm going to turn that off because I don't want to have it do it twice. But you'll see that I have my other one that I'm actually using currently set up here, and it's currently fine. So the reason you want to set it up off of, the reason why you want to set it up off of a status changing rather than the actual button clicking is because it's kind of a little bit of a weird, more of a nuanced type thing. A button has to have an action, and unfortunately, you can't have an action send a webhook. So you have to have it do something. And so what I'll do is I'll set this. When you're ready to press this button, it will change the status. So if I click on automate, you'll see when the button generate invoice is clicked, set the status to generating. This allows me to have a lot more rules if I want to. So let's say I only want to ever generate one invoice. If there's already an invoice here, I don't want to generate another one. So what I can do is I can set up a rule and say when button is clicked, and only if the status is not invoice created. So if there isn't an invoice already, then I wanted to set the status to generate. So that just allows you to have some more customization in there. So now that we have the webhook set up, you will then want to run the module. So there's a little run button right there. You can run it once, change the status across to generating, and then you'll be able to receive the first piece of information, which is this bundle right here with all of the values from that trigger. Now, one thing to note is when you're getting a webhook coming in, it's only going to show you the details of that trigger, not the entire item, itself. So what you have to do is then you have to create another module here called get an item, and I just named this as get invoice. So click on plus right here, click on Monday.com, and then we want to search get an item. We'll see right this module, click get an item, and then the ID is going to be, so if we click on this, open it up, the ID is going to be the pulse ID. So this will return all of these fields. We want to search for pulse ID. So we'll see there's a pulse ID, which is the item ID. So it's called a pulse ID behind the scenes. So we want to search for the pulse ID, and we add that in there. And make sure that the connection is your account here. If you have multiple Monday.com accounts, this is where you have to keep changing it across to the correct account. But for most of the time, you won't have to ever change it. So just note there. Save that in there. So now if you run it again, and you're going to have to run this multiple times so you can get a refreshed live data coming in here. If you generate this, click the generating button again, you'll be able to get the information now for the entire item. So you have all of these details. Then you want to get you want to create another module for get an item, but this time get a customer. So in here, we'll see we have a connected boards field, and we'll be able to grab a customer from our customers board. So within this section right here, there will be an option. Within one of the fields is called column values, and I want to say it's number 5. No, not number 5. Here we go, connected boards. So it'll show you that there's a connected boards, and then it'll return a customer pulse ID. So we can get another item. It's the exact same process. But this time, we're going to look in the Get Invoice, scroll down until we find the Connect Boards module, or the Connect Boards column. Keep opening this up until we see this number right here. So we click this button right there, and it'll always pull that field across. Click OK, and now it's saved. So now we have the line item, we have this item right here, and we have all of these fields in here, inside of that. So that is the invoice item, and then we have the customer as well. So we have those pieces of information. Now this is where it gets a little more tricky. So since we have multiple line items for this invoice, you'll see there's two set up right there, and in our template we have options for three. Since we have multiple sub items, we need to categorize those. So we need to get the sub items. So there's we're going to create an iterator, which pretty much just allows you to split one group of things into multiple groups of things. So when we got the invoice, and under the column values, we have one of these is the sub items. Might be the first. Here we go. Sub items. You'll see that there's two item values here. So what this actually means is that these are pretty much unique items. They're not sub items. They're unique items separate from the parent item. And so we're going to search for those. We're going to get those values as two different items. So this iterator just allows you to split it up into two different things. You'll see that this has one, we request the invoice, one invoice, request one customer. Then the iterator allows us to request multiple things. So we're requesting multiple items, in this case sub items. So we want to create another module called get an item, get those sub items, and now we have all the fields for both of the sub items. Next, this is a module that allows you to organize this. This is optional. This piece right here is optional. This allows you just to set the values for each of these, each of the return values for the Monday.com fields there. So this just allows you just to organize everything. So if I open this up, you'll see you can set the variable name and then you can set the variable value. So in this case, I just make it really easy on myself, so I don't have to keep looking through. I don't have to keep looking through when I am searching. Just show you. I don't have to keep searching through this and try to figure out which fields I'm looking for. This just allows me to label everything essentially. So you'll be able to create a variable name and then the variable value. So like for the item name, which is this item right name, the first column, we are going to grab the value of this right here, which is get sub items, and you'll see there's a field, there's a parent drop down called mappable column values, and you'll be able to see the various fields here. Now in this case, since it's the item name, that's going to be the very top. But for the item description, you'll see that it returns the column name right there. Now, sometimes this will happen where it won't actually show you the values that were returned, and so you'll kind of have to go in it blind. But long text, you'll see is this description right here, and you'll be able to view the column ID right there at the very top. If you're not able to view it right by default, you have to activate it. It's a setting in Monday.com. So click on your accounts, and then you click on Monday.labs. Open that up. And then you scroll down to developer mode right here, and you want to make sure this is active. So the developer mode allows you just to view what the column ID is. This is really, really helpful because it's not going to in the make software, it's not going to tell you necessarily what the column name is, like status here. It's going to tell you what the column ID is. So you might have the title of, in this case, generate invoice, but if you click on that, you'll see it's the column ID is button. So this allows you just to be able to see what the column ID is. So we'll to add the long text, make sure it's the text field, not the group. If you ever selected parents, it's going to just add it. It's going to put a text field that says collection because there's a collection of values below it, and it doesn't know how to tell you what information is in that collection. So you have to make sure you always select the bottom most value in there. Click Save, and then you do that for the rest of them. So you set the item name, the item description, the quantity, the amounts, and the total. So one thing that you cannot do within Make is you cannot pull formula columns. This right here is a formula column. This total is a multiplier of the quantity and the amounts together. So if I click on this, you'll see multiply the column amounts by the column quantity. So you cannot pull these fields, unfortunately. It's super frustrating. So you have to redo the calculations within Make. And so you click on this, and you'll be able to see I have a calculation here, which is summing those two columns up, summing the multiplication of those two. And I just have it organized like that in there, and I have the variable name as total. So I'm just pretty much rebuilding this within Make and giving the return of the field as the variable value. Click Save, click OK. Now this array aggregator pretty much just converts this a series of fields into one. So it just it compiles it all into one document, and you'll see that the little icon is kind of describing what that does. This, you have to scroll all the way down to the very bottom. Well, you have to first select a source module. You always want to select the iterator because you want to select where it splits off, and then you want to stop it. And you'll see there's a gray box around this just showing you that it's grabbing all the information within here and kind of containing it into one section so you can grab the information that's only in there and not get worried about the other stuff. So once you select the source module, scroll all the way down to the very bottom, and then you want to select the fields that are returned from this module right here, not this one, because we don't care about this information. We already have all that compiled and organized in here. So we want to select the item name, item description, quantity, amount, and total. And click OK. Now I have another one of these organized modules over here, setting multiple values, and this is for the various values in the invoice. So things like the customer name, the customer address, customer email, the invoice number, the event dates, and the grand total. So all these ones that are not the sub-items, I have those organized as well. Again, this is optional. You could hypothetically go through and find them all without doing this, but I just find it super easy, and it makes it a lot easier. It makes it a lot less of a headache to go and set those names later on when we're generating the documents. So this is the same thing. You just have to go and search for everything. So invoice name, where you want that to match the name of the event in this case. So Jackson's birthday party, that's going to be the invoice name. And then we want to add the customer name, customer address. For the customer address, we're just going to make sure that we are searching from the get customer module, because that's going to be pulling from the other board. It's going to show you all those values. So we're just going to grab the customer address. And then the customer email, invoice number, very simple, event date, really simple. And then here we have another multiplier. So since we can't grab the sum total up here from this formula column, because this is just summarizing all the information from down here, we need to compile all the information within this module. So click edit, you'll see it's the sum of the totals of 3 different possible line items. So for this tutorial, I'm only showing you 3 options. Unfortunately, it's a lot more difficult to only add a row if there's a line item to fill it. It's really difficult to do that, so I'm just showing you that you can add up to, in this case 3, or you can keep duplicating this. It's just, I didn't have that for this example. So you can create up to 3. Now what this does is it just compiles, it just puts together, to get the grand total, it gets the totals of each of the line items and it puts it all in one column, so the grand total. And this is just a sum of these various different totals. Now, what is important, and this is going to look a little bit different if you're on Make versus Integromat. I'm using the Legacy Integromat, but it's pretty much the same. It will look a little bit different for this specifically because we are grabbing the sum of this array aggregator. So you'll see if I click that drop down, you'll see all of these different values that we set beforehand. So there's a total right there. We're grabbing the total from each of the line items and we want to compile them all together. So you'll see that there's an array, and you'll see the array value is 1 for this one. You'll see the array value is 2 for this one, and we'll see the array value is 3 for this one. What this means is that the array is going to be pulling from the first return of the value. So since we have 2 modules here, it's going to look at this and it's going to say this is array 1 and this is array 2. So what we're doing is we wanted to add array 1, which is that first line item, plus array 2, which is this line item, and then plus array 3, which is optional because there's no third line item. So if there's no line items, it won't grab that information at all, and it will work just fine. So you have that compiled together. Click save, click OK, save all that. Now comes the fun part. Now we got to put everything together, and that's going to be done with a Google Docs module within Make. And this allows you to generate a document off of a template. So you log into your account, your Google Docs account. Then you find the document ID that you want to duplicate from. In this case, it's this one right here, which is Invoice Template Demo. You can search it, and you can also search your various other files, and you can create the template. It's really easy to create a template. So when we're generating this new template, to put in custom values like this. We can format however we like, but to add the values that we want to get filled in from Monday.com, all you have to do is put those two little bracket icons at the before and after. Oops, no, change the formatting. Before and after the name. So we're setting. So like, let's say we want to add a new field here. We put the thing before, and we'll say let's call it new field, and then after. This will automatically get recognized within Make, and it'll add it as a variable to fill in. So you'll see customer name, and look over here, you'll see customer name. Whatever you set the name as, it'll show up here as a value to get filled. So we'll say customer name, and we'll be able to add a we'll be able to add a module or a variable from our database right there. So now all you got to do is just fill everything in. So we set customer name, and since we already set the names for everything, it just makes it super easy. So we just got to go search down and look for the customer name. It's right there. Customer name, add that in there, and so on and so forth. Customer address, customer email, customer invoice, event date, etc. Now, when it comes to the line items, this work is a little bit more tricky. We are selecting the array from this array aggregator. We're setting the item name to match item name, description, total, quantity, all of the rest of those. But to add a new line item, and you'll see what I have here. I have line item name number 1, item name number 2, and item name number 3. So what you have to do is you have to add all those fields for the first line item. You'll see all of that from total to the item name. We add those in there. Then we have to copy each of these modules down here. So for the item name number 2, we copy the item name number 1, and then we want to make sure that the number in there is going to be a 2 for the second line item. So again, we are taking the second line item, so it's going to say take the second line item, and we want to add it in to this second line item. And so we're just making sure that those items get copied across. Once you do that for all of the rest of the totals, you come down here and then get a grand total. I add a little price icon in this because it's just a number. If not, so just put a dollar symbol there, and then we have the grand total, which is based off of this top one. You have the option to add images if you like. So you can add images either from a specific field within Monday.com. I'm not going to show how to do that because it's a whole different process, but you can add images in there. So like for this template, you'll see that I have my logo. If you want to swap that out and use this as like a template and be able to add a customer logo or something in there, you can certainly do that. It's really easy. You just add it in here, but I'm not going to show you how to do that for now. And then we want to add a title for the document itself. So what is the title of the document? In this case, it is Jackson's birthday party. We're going to grab this name, and we want to pull the invoice name that we set beforehand. And then finally, we have to set a location for where we want this document to be duplicated to. So we're generating a new Google Doc. We're not generating the PDF right now. So we're generating a new Google Doc, and we want to select the location. So I'm going to select it to my Google Drive, and then I have a folder here already set up. This is just a basic automation folder. Click OK. Now we need to download the PDF, and we need to upload it into this field column right here. So in that, we are going to create a new module for Google Docs, and that's going to be download a document. So in here, you'll be able to see, you'll select the document ID that was just generated, and then you'll be able to select what type of document you want to download. So this allows you to generate various other types of documents. So if you want to generate a TXT file, the HTML file, any of those fields, any of those types of documents, you can download it. In this case, I just want to download a PDF, and I want to click OK. Then we want to upload the file. So there's another module in Monday.com called Add a File to a Column Value. So we want to create that, set that module. And then if you click on this, you'll be able to select the board ID. In this case, it's the event board. And then we select the pulse ID, which is all the way down to the very bottom, which is that first event trigger. And then we want to select the column ID. So in this case, it's the invoice to match right here. So we'll select the invoice. And then we want to set the source file. In this case, it is this module right there, which is Google Docs -downloaded document. Click OK. Now it's going to take that downloaded document and it's going to add it into the file. Next, this is not necessary, but I just like to do this so I know that it's worked, is to update the status of this item, because now we have the document in there. I want to update the status that the invoice has been created, just giving a confirmation. So we create a new module called Update Column Values of a specific item. We open this up, and we select the board ID, select the pulse ID, which is the item ID, and then we want to select the status. And then in here, you'll be able to select the index, and we want to index it as 1, or however you want to have this set up. It's a lot easier when you actually set this up. It doesn't look like this after. It'll just convert it for you. It'll show you index, and then you can select the list of drop downs that you have set up in Monday.com. So click save, go OK. And then finally, this is something, again, optional. I don't like to have my Google Drive account cluttered with a bunch of generated documents, especially if I'm managing it for a client. So I want to delete that document that we just created, since we already have it downloaded as a PDF and it's already in Monday.com. So I don't want to have that as a duplicated document within my Google Drive. So I want to delete just the Google Doc, which is delete a document. Very simple. Select the document ID that we created before, and that will just delete it from the system. So let's watch it run. I'm going to delete these 2 modules. Click on run. I'm going to go back over to Monday.com. I'm going to delete this invoice here. I'm going to change this to blank, status to blank, and I'm going to click generate invoice. Go over to make, and we'll be able to watch this happen. So what's going to happen is it's going to grab the update, which is that trigger of the, oh, sorry, we got to click the generate invoice button first. It's going to take the status, which is a trigger, and it's going to run through each of the modules. And as you're building this out, this might give you errors, and you'll be able to read the errors and figure out what's going on, and then be able to fix them as you go. So you'll see everything ran through correctly, and if we ever open up one of these things, we can see what things it returns. So like if you're getting an error, like it's not giving you a specific number you want, and I had this when I was first building this, then you can, like, let's say if the variables isn't working, you can come in here and we'll see, okay, why do all these variables look correct? And then move on from there, and then be able to find a pinpoint where your problem is. Let's go back over to the event board, and we'll see that the document has been created. It looks like it was created twice because I might have either forgot to delete the other documents or pressed the button twice. Open this up, and we'll be able to see all this information is correct based off of the Monday.com board. And so this is how you can automatically generate invoices off of a template, and you can pull from multiple boards. You can duplicate the process. You can have multiple field columns. So like, let's say you have a company that deals with a customer and a vendor, and you need to grab the vendor information. Same exact process, create another linked boards, a column, and be able to grab the information for a vendor. So that's how you do that. There's a lot more options and things and tools that you can build in this. And if you want me to be able to build this for you, you can visit my website, mymanmonday.com, and you can set up a time, and we'll be able to set this up for you. So hope you enjoy.